from Richmond Brothers, financial advisor and CEO and co-owner, Matt Curfman. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Bart. Happy March.
Yes, it's finally here.
It is finally here.
Yeah, it's finally here, and warmer weather is just days away.
Spring is that much closer.
Matt, first, I wanted to extend our condolences to you and your family on the loss of your mom.
Thank you.
Just
I
the other
appreciate
day.
that.
Sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, we just put out the obituary yesterday, as a matter of fact. So she had dementia for a long time. And so it was certainly a very sad moment, but also relieved that her suffering is over.
Yes, she had so many friends and family in this community, and knew so many. And I know all of those folks join me in wishing you and your family peace as you deal with her loss.
Well, thank you. Even your last guest, Jeff Bontrager, said on his way out, he said, we used to do the nursery at Jackson As Church with your mom, and my mom loved little kids. She wanted a lot of grandkids. I have not given her any, but I have 4 siblings, and 2 of them have given her grandchildren. But you never know the touch that you have, the impact that you have, and even that comment, I never knew the connection when Jeff was on his way out.
Well, you're dealing with people in senior years and things that can happen that you're not planning for, and it's kind of what you were planning on talking about today.
Yeah, there's, even as I thought about coming on today, I told you it was nice to put regular clothes on and come out in public, and I love coming on JTV and spending time with you. There's crazy headlines. Markets are free falling, it feels like, with possible, conflict abroad and war and missile attacks and drone attacks, and that stuff impacts the markets, even if which impacts investments, which impact retirements. So there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty. So as we kind of think about what do you do in the moment, the best answer is to not make any knee-jerk reactions. And so I think if you take a step back, the bigger question is, did you already have a plan in place to address uncertainty? And that applies even in my mom's situation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. In my family situation, it applies to everyone who has money and investments and is saved and want that nest egg to help maybe support their retirement now or sometime in the future.
Mm-hmm. There's headlines today about the war. Last week there's headlines about something else. Next week it'll be different headlines.
Yeah, and it's hard because there's a human side that comes with all of this. If we remove all the emotion from that and say what is the impact to people's savings and investments and their money and how does it all flow through, we really just try to basically make sure that we're not in a position before it happens that we have to have a knee-jerk reaction. So on your screen, I believe, if you're watching, there's 5 different kind of pillars that we really operate off of, especially as we're doing retirement planning with couples and singles. But an income strategy, investment strategy, tax strategy, healthcare strategy, and under that healthcare strategy, we're talking specifically about Medicare and then maybe chronic illness. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. And then legacy, meaning if you pass away, what happens next? Do you have all your T's crossed and I's dotted, so to speak?
It's not something you just set aside a half hour to decide.
No, these are really big, important decisions, but they're not as overwhelming as they seem when you look at that list. So even going back to the end of the year and heading into the 1st of January this year, you and I got together and we talked about maybe some action steps of just sitting down and creating an inventory. So easy step, where do you have everything? I recently met with someone our team did, and they basically are self-managing, but they ended up, by the time they gave us their inventory, they had 14 different accounts spread all over the place, from old 401ks, old jobs, old Roth IRAs, and so they lacked the coordination. And they were really focusing on the investment strategy only, but we helped open their eyes to see on your screen, I named my book, The Fearless Financial Approach. Fearless is not reckless. It's literally highlighted to mean we want to help you fear less. These are scary things. So when you start to look at investment strategy, legacy, healthcare, taxes, and income, and you do it in a coordinated way, it actually helps you feel comfortable that you have a plan in place to address when there is market noise, when there are periods like this.
So legacy strategy, are you talking about what your family, that you, who you leave all this to?
Yeah, so under legacy is just trying to help families coordinate on the estate planning side. And a lot of things, you know, we're so inordained with Hollywood and movie and TVs, and you always hear comments like, oh, what did they leave in their will? Well, if you actually have a good estate plan, very rarely are there any assets left to the will. So beneficiary forms matter extensively, and they supersede anything the will says. So when we work with people who have 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, Roths, investment brokerage, TOD, trust, and then you think about your home, condo, if you own a home, you can name beneficiaries. So we just try to help people ask the right questions and then coordinate with an estate planning attorney to help them legally set it up.
There's typically a huge unanswered question as people look at what retirement's going to be like, and that's how long you're going to live
Yeah.
and how long your retirement is going to be.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. It could be 5 years, it could be 35 years.
It could be. People are both living longer, and we're also seeing with longer life some higher cases of, you know, chronic illness, like we just talked about with my mom. She was 74 years young, I say, because she passed well before her time. And so that was not part of my parents' retirement plan. So if you take a step back, it's an awful situation, but from a purely financial perspective, there are tools that we can use and talk to families about before these events ever happen. I don't have the exact statistic with me, but when we present educationally, we see that it's not really a question of if chronic illness will affect, it's when and how. And it's someone who's 65, I think the statistic I recently read was that 72% of people over 65 will at some point face some version of chronic illness. And a big misunderstanding, we stick our head in the sand because it's not something we want to talk about, just like death. They're scary, uncomfortable things, but Medicare does not cover extended long-term care and chronic illness. And so there are tools. And so again, if you're not talking about these things, one, you can certainly call our firm and we'll happily talk about them, because there's so much more than just what are the investments that you own and what's that portfolio strategy.
Well, let's talk about the Medicare and income adjustments. What surprises people there with that healthcare question?
Yeah, so great question. So Medicare is going to be primary for most people at age 65, and so there's income limits. They're called IRMA, income-related monthly adjustments, and they start looking at your income when you're 63. So it's a 2-year look back before you turn Medicare. So the higher your income is, potentially the more you'll pay for monthly Medicare premiums, kind of on a forward basis. Now, it's not forever, but every year your income is going to be looked at.
It changes every year?
There's an inflation-adjusted amount every year. And so for example, a married filing joint couple, and again, this is just general information, but it's about, I think, $212,000, give or take. So if you go above that level and you're 63 or older and you're about to be on Medicare, or you already are, you're going to see your monthly Medicare premiums go up in the next couple of years, which means if you're on Social Security, they deduct more from your Social Security benefit to cover Medicare. So being aware of that, that's a big surprise. Let's say that you're 64 and you're retiring, maybe you get a separation package to exit early at 64, and you get 6 months or 9 months of income on top of what you've already earned. That's a big income year, bigger than most, and now in a year you're going to be on Medicare. So that's where surprises, I think, come in on that side of it.
Once you start taking Social Security and you keep working, does future earnings impact what your Social Security payment will be?
Great question, and we get it often. So most people are going to find that the Social Security income range is between 62, when most people can turn it on for retirement, and 70 is kind of the longest you defer. If you had a spouse pass away, you can turn on earlier at 60, disability, there's some other things. But we have a number of people who maybe separate from full-time work, and let's say they're 64, and their full retirement age under Social Security is 67. If they start working and earn more than, let's just say, $24,000 approximately, then there's a clawback provision. Social Security pulls some of those benefits back.
Oh, wow.
So you want to also coordinate from an income plan, not only, when do you draw Social Security? We just had a case where someone had retired from Consumers Energy, and we did all the planning, and then 3 weeks later they said, hey, someone reached out to me, they want me to consult. We had already turned on their Social Security and they had just about to get their first check. Well, guess what? We can undo that in certain circumstances and make it look like it never happened. So then his benefit, in this case, will keep growing as long as we defer, and we just look at it every year. It's a great question on income coordination because you have Social Security. Very few people nowadays have monthly pensions, but some do. You also have portfolio draws. When you're 73 and older, required minimum distributions. So if you have all these 14 accounts, the one person I just told you, how do you coordinate? Should I consolidate those, and which one should I draw from first, and why? What do I have to take when I'm 73? There's a lot of moving pieces in that small circle with those 5 phrases we put.
And it's not just coordinating that. You have to coordinate what the rest of the family is, their involvement in the retirement decision.
Yep. And oftentimes, whether it's spouses or partners, we all have different backgrounds and different histories around how we grew up around the topic of money. And there's no right or wrong way. We just need to be conscious of that so that whoever you, the viewer, is working with understands both sides, and we're kind of talking to you and with you as opposed to dictating.
And you've mentioned written clarity a couple of times. What do you mean by that?
So we saw a survey, and we might even have a copy of it here on your slides. Having a formal plan can improve confidence about retirement. There it is. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if you look at 1 being not confident and 10 being very confident, the very last one on the bottom on the left says have a formal written plan. And so when you have a coordinated income plan in place for retirement, that couple has a 7.6 confidence level relative to someone who hasn't given it much thought at a 4. So what does that mean? When should I draw from my IRAs, my Roths, my 401ks, my TOD? When should I turn my pension on? When should I draw Social Security? When should my spouse draw Social Security? Tying it all into Medicare and chronic illness as a concern for other costs, and then your other question of longevity. No one knows how long we're going to be given.
All right, so final thoughts for viewers?
Just, there's a lot of noise out there, and so we would ask that you, if you have questions, just reach out. If you're working with someone, reach out to them. But just make sure you have that confident written retirement income plan, because now when days like today happen, market headlines I'm talking about in the noise, that will continue to happen. But if you have some level of confidence that your plan doesn't depend on what the market's doing today or this month or this week, that should help you with your own confidence kind of moving forward.
Great help. Appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm going to give one little shout out. Today is my younger brother's birthday. Travis, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Travis. Matt, good to see you. It's Richmond Brothers co-owner and financial, I would call you financial guru, but financial advisor, CEO at Richmond Brothers, Matt Curfman.
Thank you, Bart.
Thanks so much. We've got more of today's show in just a moment. We'll